That is a huge, huge change, and not just for Formula One. It'll be a change, in my opinion, for the world over the next 10 to 20 years. This is the largest rule change. We're changing not just the power unit, but the chassis regulations as well. There's nothing that's carryover. No, not even a bolt is carryover. So this is a huge, huge change for these organizations, for us. And the work on this one, which is your question, started all the way back in 2024 for us. It was the first point at which it was very clear that the rules were changing. There wasn't a lot of detail wrapped around it. The power unit side was a lot more developed than the chassis side. And that was the point at which we started to work hand in hand with Mercedes. That was the power unit manufacturer we signed the agreement with. And so that work is already a couple of years before you turn a wheel. That's already ongoing. On the chassis side, again, really around the beginning of 2024, middle of 2024 is when we spent quite a bit of time working on the 2026 regulations. So several years before is about the right timeline. In 24, you're still trying to work on that 24 car whilst developing the 25 car on the wind tunnel, whilst developing the 26 car in concept. And absolutely, I think that's probably something we don't explain perhaps as much as well as we should do to the outside world, but it's very normal to have overlapping programs, and in my experience, 3 concurrent car programs. And then on top of that, we run an older car normally for testing, which is a TPC car. That's normally for young drivers. So 4 car programs running concurrently in 1 year. In our case, from where we were position-wise, we've been really what I would call forward investing. So for us, every year we've been investing in the following year very early, and there'll be a surprise. We'll do that in 26, going into 27 as well. For me, it's about making sure that we're getting ahead of the curve on everything we're doing, because we have so much more to improve and learn as a result. There are others that are fighting for a championship, and the difference is a little bit more. It's a lot harder in that circumstance to let go of the current year and put future focus. So if we put some real numbers to that, the regulations for 2026, we were only allowed to start working within the wind tunnel in January the 2nd of 2025, and we did. On January the 2nd, that's when we were working on the 2026 car. And in fact, in the case of Williams, we only spent 2 weeks, that was it, working on the 2025 car in this year. So very little whatsoever at all. And I'm sure that will be the least of anyone, but very aggressively in that direction of travel. The simple facts behind it are that it didn't matter so much to myself and our organization where we finished. It was more important to make sure we took the steps forward in our future. Yeah, so even the steering wheel changes, and our steering wheel will be changing as well. Part of the reason why, whilst the changes will be subtle and small, it is quite different on how you're going to be using electrical energy next year, and there are some changes to the steering wheel that will help you do a better job with that. So no, nothing's carryover. I mean, the answer is yes. We're continuously looking at the outside world. Formula One isn't the most advanced in a huge number of areas, and I said this publicly once, but AI is one of them. The outside world is ahead of where we are, and there's inspiration we can take in that. Materials, there's always some interesting ways of using carbon fiber materials or other metallic materials, or even ways of printing that, again, it's really interesting to see what the outside world is doing and understand where we are today, because it's Formula One, and this is one of the reasons why I love it. It is absolutely pinnacle of technology, but at the same time, a little bit artisan. If you were to walk around our facility, you'll see a lot of human beings pushing carbon fiber into molds, and that's the parts, most of the parts you see on the car, 85% are carbon fiber. And what I like is this mixture between this sort of artisanal hand method of doing things and the real modern way of, for example, in metallics, it's all about 3D printing more and more, but it's not as light a component. And what we're interested in is what technologies are being developed in the area and where will we be in the next 3 to 5 years. I think the way that we conceptualize car, the way we go about the understanding of what it will look like in the future, that will change in the next 5 years. I have no doubt about it. It's changing now already. And the way we build the car will change in the next 5 years as well. So those are the 2 areas where I think there'll be large shifts. And it's always hard to know. Everyone says 5 years, and in 5 years it doesn't move perhaps as much as you want it to, but you can see how the world's developing around technology at the moment, and I think there's a good pathway for us. Yeah, it's probably more frequently we would like. We're continuously trying to innovate and change. And I mean, fortunately, we develop technologies I think are used more often than not. It's worth saying that. It's not that the technologies are thrown away. All too often in the world of software, you could develop something that ends up being a stopgap for a year, and then you find a new and better way of doing it in the future. So that absolutely is the case. It's almost this live prototyping exercise where you improve and learn on it year by year. In the case of other technologies, we're often, I mean, one of them wants to point out is we're often pushing the boundaries of the regulations, and very often you're pulled back from that before you even see the car appearing on track. So there, I would say more often than other areas, you'll see a technology that you wish you could show to the world but hasn't made it. And there's plenty littered through our history that you can see. There's six-wheeled cars, there are fan cars, there's the sort of big expenses on it, but there's smaller innovations as well that never made it because they were sort of floundering or pushing the boundaries of the grey, let's say, in that circumstance. But for the most part, the way you get success in Formula One is to be effectively making sure you're delivering most of those capabilities to track. You either choose to do more, could be even just as benign as more upgrades in a year, or more investment in your future. But the simple matter of fact is we're all constrained by the same pot of money. But I think this is one of the best things we've done as a sport, because prior to this, you would simply write a check and just spend more money. It wouldn't be efficient. What we're really having to do now is properly adjudicate which one of these two is the right solution, both for today and perhaps the right solution for the next 2 to 3 years. And they're not always the same thing. And I like that compromise. That sort of means that it gives teams like ourselves an opportunity to do something different and see if it pays off. I think one of the largest changes that we have to acknowledge for next year is we'll be going to sustainable fuel. So that is a huge, huge change, and not just for Formula One. It'll be a change, in my opinion, for the world over the next 10 to 20 years. The simple facts behind it are no one really knows what the right direction of travel is for road cars. There's hydrogen still out there, there's electric vehicles still out there, there's a number of combustion engines, but certainly for the next 10 years, combustion engines will be there, and synthetic fuel is one way of making sure that we're effectively continuing on that pathway and buying ourselves time more than anything else. And one of the reasons why I joined Formula One, and Williams was very much a spearheading force for this. If you think of ABS, traction control, active suspension, active aerodynamics, those are all aspects, a lot of them developed within Williams or put into Williams' car back in the 80s and 90s, but irrespective still. And those technologies you have pretty much on every road car these days. I like the fact that we're this pioneering base, and I like the fact that synthetic fuel could be the next element that completely changes the world and we'll be at the forefront of it. I think the reality behind next year is because the world change is so enormous, it will expand the grid out a little bit. There's a but. Now what you have on the grid is 10 to next year 11 teams that are actively very good at developing. That's why you have a closed grid. So even though it'll expand, I think you'll see it compress pretty quickly, quicker than it ever has before.